And normally I would sleep I sleep generally when I'm going to sleep in a fetal position. It's very comfortable.
Are you saying that just because I hit record?
Yes, I'm talking because the record is on. But, when you're more concerned about rolling down the incline on which you are sleeping.
It wasn't that bad, was it?
Visually it's not bad, but like once you lay down on it, but you're also like on a nylon sheet essentially when you're in a tent, right?
Right.
Then it's much more slippery. So my tent's going sideways, like, perpendicular to your fence. I am pointed with my feet at the fence and my head at the house.
Yeah, I figured that's what was going to happen when I was looking at it yesterday when you were putting it up.
Yeah.
But I was like, let him figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, some things you just got to experience.
I mean, there's enough room in there. It's definitely, I would say, although the packaging says a 4-person tent, as a 6'1" individual, it is a 2-person tent at best. Because if you put 4 people in there, you're going to be real snug. But also, I mean, the Plano bow case does take a considerable amount of room.
Yes.
But
that's like one person.
Yeah.
If you got a small child.
Well,
that's a person.
We had originally bought this tent because we were thinking, we need a tent that can fit me, my wife, and then, if we're going camping, not hunting, both of our dogs.
Well, that would work.
So, and it would totally work for that.
Yeah.
But, I know that it's not really camping since I'm, on your property, but I have not camped it makes me feel old, but now I'm like in decades.
Is this counting military?
Yeah. Because, even when I was in the Army, we only did real camping that once. Like that one time you do in basic training for like 2 days.
The one time during FTX or whatever.
Yeah, when you put up your terrible little... Well, you have your buddy, so each of you gets half of the tent and one tent pole. Put up your terrible little 2-person tent, and then you and your buddy snuggle in the hole that you dug in the tent.
You say snuggle, but what it really is someone's the back spoon, someone's the front spoon.
Yeah. But it's not like you're going to sleep face to face, because that's really weird.
And this is how military friendships are started.
Yeah.
In between the sheets.
Exactly. But, then you sleep on your little yoga mat that they give you. They don't call it a yoga mat. I forget what they call it, but you have a yoga mat. The Army gives you one. And as we're picking up our tents, I found a brown recluse under my yoga mat.
Yummy.
Yeah. I'm like, great.
Well, at least it's not a fire ant.
That's true. But being allergic and dying, the circle and circle for those things is not necessarily a single circle, but it is a pretty well-connected circle when you look at the bigger picture. And
you mean like the pros and cons circle?
No, like a Venn diagram.
Oh, okay.
Right? So here's death over here, and here's being allergic to things over here. And they're not quite a concentric circle, but they're definitely close.
Got it.
And I would rather not find out what a brown recluse bite feels like.
Me neither.
Or does. I've seen enough on the internet. I don't need it happening to me.
Is that something you've Google searched? Because I would feel like, that could lead to nightmares.
Well, there's plenty of stuff plenty of media and content I've consumed that can give nightmares, sure. But sometimes you have to look that stuff up. Maybe not half, but a large portion of being an Army medic is looking stuff up to see what you're looking at when you have random soldiers coming into your aid station.
Oh yeah, sure. For reference.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's the same as.
Is it like? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say.
Is it like the STDs presentation they give during basic?
Yeah. It's.
Where like this is what this looks like, and this is what that looks like, and you're just like, these are the worst pictures they could have found.
And every soldier comes in thinking he's the first guy who said it, and comes in like, Doc, does this look infected? Like, come on, man. But it's kind of like I used to do tech support, after the military, and half of what you do in tech support is just Googling the answer. Like, honestly.
You're just sitting there.
Yeah.
And someone's talking to you on the phone, and you got the Google search engine up.
Yep.
That's so funny.
I mean, if we're being totally honest, most tech support is Googling the answer, because if one person has had the problem, several people have had the problem.
That is hilarious.
And it gets kind of silly, like how little tech support actually does anything.
That's funny.
But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I had looked up for references, because I mean, if you go out into there's an analogy. It's 4:07 a.m. So if anybody ever hears this audio, this is not normally the time at which I wake up. So my normal quick wit and mental faculties are not quite fully activated yet. I'm only about halfway through this Red Bull. But there's an analogy that I'm going to butcher, but basically, if you go out into a field of horses, something about finding zebras, yada yada, you at least have to know what you're looking for before you go out there.
That was the worst.
Right? No, I'm not.
That was
I'm
such
not fully functional right now.
a broken down analogy. It was like you wanted to paint a picture for us, and you told us only what colors you were going to use.
Exactly. No, I'm telling you, I'm not fully. I'm not on yet. I'll get there. But and you gotta look at a lot of gross stuff when you're working in medical. Either you're looking at it in front of you, or you're looking at it in a book.
Yeah.
I was working one time, and the PA that I worked with called me in and was like, "Hey, I need you to come help me with this," because essentially as a medic in an aid station, you're a glorified assistant to the doctor.
Sure.
So he calls me in, and one of my buddies is sitting on his chair. He's like, "All right," and tells my friend, he's like, "All right, go ahead and turn around and drop your pants," which is an awkward conversation if you're not in the medical field. So he does, and he's spreads his cheeks. And I have never ever wanted to gain that much information on one of my friends before, but so me and the doctor are sitting there knocking at the kid's back door. He had hemorrhoids, and he didn't know. The kid didn't know what hemorrhoids were.
Okay.
And so we're sitting back there staring in to his back door, and we're like, sure enough, he got the big, For those who don't know what a hemorrhoid looks like, essentially, if you're imagining your O-ring, imagine it with like a small purple grape attached to it, except that grape is uncomfortable, kind of burns, and is a little itchy. That's what we were looking at to paint you a full picture. And my doctor, or PA, whatever you want to call him, he was just tickled pink that he was making me, who's I definitely am a junior rank to him, look at my friend's O-ring. He's like, I gotcha. I'm like, oh, thanks, sir. I really needed this today.
This is a very interesting conversation.
I mean, I've seen enough. Granted, I'm glad that I didn't have to work on anyone that I know, but I've seen enough in my travels that I go out of my way generally to avoid real gore if I can help it.
And we're going hunting.
Well, there's a difference.
But like, we're gonna see some gore.
If you eat meat, like Steve Rinella, he says you got to find your link in the food chain, right?
Right.
And if you eat meat, some people don't want to know how the sausage gets made. I don't care about how the sausage gets made. Yes, it has to get made, and yes, something has to die. And if you go to the store, you can feel like maybe you're not involved in that process, but you're contributing to that process when you buy meat. And I don't think hunting involves gore, because it's not like we go out into there are much worse ways to kill an animal than with a rifle or a bow, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And so I don't look at it as gore, really, because like gore to me is the stuff that you just go into Bing search with the safe filters off and type in blood and guts and gore and get real images of real gross things.
Oh, yeah, you absolutely could.
But I mean, an animal without its skin is not inherently gory or gross to me. I mean, if you eat barbecue and you got a rack of ribs, it's the same thing. I mean, potentially I'm really cynical and really desensitized to things, but I just don't like looking at real, like, I don't know, medical stuff anymore, as far as like, I don't want to see the aftermath of a terrorist attack or a car wreck.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. The imagery that we're discussing here is different. The connection to it is different.
Yeah.
There is I guess gore is like not the right verbiage to use, even though in a certain sense it might apply. A better way to describe it is just that you're going to see the harvest.
Sure.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. I mean, we jumped some deer last night, but
that's true.
There's no guarantee we'll see deer today.
Well, I'm full of analogies and anecdotes and idioms, but there's one I picked up from a buddy of mine. My buddy Jackson listened to a lot of music, and I don't know why this stuck to me all these years, but it was a song that he had played, and in the song they said, "Tomorrow's not promised today," right?
That's right.
And that, I don't know why, but that stuck with me. It still sticks with me. I think about it, because it's a good way to think about things. Like you're not guaranteed a deer when you go out here. Yes, we saw like 4 of them.
Yep.
Yes, we saw a giant herd of elk, but it's the same with me chasing the bear through Snoqualmie. Me and the bear's itineraries are completely different, and he and I have not had our schedules connect in such a way that I can put him on the dinner table just yet.
Right.
But and that goes back to what I'm saying. It's like it's not promised. You gotta work for it. So hopefully we'll see something out there. Hopefully we'll get something out there.
Yeah. When I was just talking about like the gore, if you will, of hunting, it is the processing of the animal after you've taken the shot. So and what that entails is the removing of the guts. Yep. and the stripping of the hide and the breaking down of the muscle tissue and the thing that really gets the thing that always sticks with me is the smell.
There's definitely
the smell of a pool of blood.
Fresh meat and blood has its own specific smell, and I would say that smell is far better than rotting flesh.
Oh, you have leaps and bounds.
But
a fresh animal kill smells a million times better.
But it has
than
a very
something that's been
distinct
left out in
smell.
the sun for a couple days.
I mean, we found that dead elk, and it had been there for the better portion of a year.
Oh yeah.
And it even then it still had that corpse smell.
Yeah, I will say it was extremely subdued though.
Yeah.
Because a lot of that muscle was gone.
Yep.
Like the bone, it was just bone. The guts were gone.
Yep.
If there was more of that lingering around, then it would have been far more pungent.
Oh, for sure. And we might have seen predators too, because if there's enough to make that smell, then they're, scavengers are like, well, guess I'm going to check in for that one.
Yeah.
But going back to earlier, and to answer your question from earlier, I ended up being in Iraq for 10 months.
Oh, okay.
And in that time, we had chews, and then as we were leaving, and a chew, I forget the acronym, but it's basically a small trailer that you and however many sardines they want to cram into.
So you and about 30 people?
Well, I mean, depending on what stage of the process you are, it could be you and one guy or you and four guys, right? Or four guys total. But what I was going to say about, gore, to me, animal processing is not gory, because gore generally is, at least in my head, gore is something that shouldn't exist, right? So, like, if I were to jump out of the vehicle right now, slam into one of those telephone poles and cut myself in half, that's gory. Because my body has become injured in a way that's completely unnatural, and I've got my legs 40 feet one way and my top 65 feet the other way, and that is gore.
Now, but see, that's a great explanation of that word, and really paints a very accurate presentation of the word.
Yeah, because it's not like we're stringing up an animal like the movie Predator,
right.
That there's gore.
Oh yeah, that's definitely gory.
I think that on the whole, the vast majority of people that go out to harvest an animal, once that animal is harvested, it's still treated with a fair amount of respect, because it's not,
right.
It's not immediately bisected and thrown into the back of the truck willy-nilly. There's a proper amount of care required to process the animal in a way that is also not going to make you sick from consuming it.
Right.
Right. And I think that, for me at least, gore is something that should be unnatural. So it's not something that we would be seeing out here.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense when you put it that way. And I don't know if I could have explained it quite like that. But there is definitely...
I'm starting to wake up.
There's definitely a difference.
Yeah.
However, having said that, there are some similarities, and I will tell a quick little story and explain the similarities as far as the realism between dealing with animals and people. You know what? Maybe I won't, because there's not a lot of reason to. I was surprised, I will say that, though. The first time I actually smelled a pool of human blood, I was like taken right back mentally to processing an animal. I was like,
well, and
that smells exactly the same. I was just like very awestruck.
Well, and that's because, our brains are wired in such a way, and our bodies as well. Our brains are designed to prevent injury to us, right? Then there's certain people that maybe lack that base functionality, which is why you have adrenaline junkies and base jumpers and all kinds of craziness going on out there. I'm not one of those types. Like, I like adrenaline, yes. Do I want to hunt bears and cougars? Yes, because I think that would be exciting. but your brain makes these connections, like with the smell of the insides of a fresh harvest, and so your brain immediately connected that to when you're smelling people juice, because your brain is trying to protect you from any sort of trauma, in that case, mental trauma, in the same way that, we as archers, in archery, it's a well-known practice that you should be surprising yourself with your shot, right? Because your brain doesn't want your body to experience any sort of trauma, to include impact trauma. And firing a projectile creates impact trauma both on the receiving end, where your target's at, but also on your body. And that's why, people flinch. That's why people torque their hands, move different parts of their body, is because their brain is trying at the very base level to prevent any sort of impact trauma.
Have you taken the Shot IQ training class?
I have not.
Got it. It's gonna be a good class for you. I want to take it myself. I just haven't saved up the money to do it. Is really what it comes down to.
It is a little pricey.
Usually they're during the week.
Yep.
I'm a second shifter, so
Yep.
I'm not taking off a day of work to go to the class. No offense, Joel. It's just I gotta make money. So.
Yeah, for sure. We all gotta eat.
I gotta pay bills.
But for me personally, and I've looked up the class, and I think that the class has a lot of great information, and I've watched different talks that he has given. But for me personally, I don't think that I would benefit from that style of teaching as much as maybe other people do. Which is not to say that it's a bad class. It's just, I've been in the Army. I don't really want to go through anything that is basic training style. I would say that a large portion of the population, myself included, don't like being yelled at. And it's not that, he's going to yell at me in an exceeding amount, and it's not that I'm overly sensitive, but there's a style of teaching. Everyone has their own style of teaching that is most conducive to learning to them, and for me, I'm not sure exactly that would be it.
I don't know if I've ever seen him yell at people.
Well, it creates a high stress environment,
Yeah.
and that could be yelling, that could be ripping on you for your form, or
Right.
whatever release you're shooting. And
Sure.
for me, I don't know, because it is a little expensive, and I feel like at a certain point there's only so much information you can take in before you start getting into your own head about the archery journey that you're on.
Mm-hmm.
And start overcomplicating things for yourself. If your process works for you, then I wouldn't worry about anything else either. Because I imagine that, at least from the videos that I've watched with Joel Turner, and like he does the elk shape camps.
Yeah.
At least watching some of the information that's being put out, the heavy emphasis is pulling through your shots. And for me, if I can get the clip notes on something, then I can take that and work on that myself.
Right. So the basis. So I used to be a firearms instructor.
Sure.
Start there. The basis of what he's trying to teach is a compressed surprise break,
Mm-hmm.
and that has to focus on sight alignment in the target as you see it through your scope,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that your sight is where it needs to be in position. So for archery, that would be your bubble, that would be the sight, scope housing in relation to the peep, and that pin in the center as it sits on your target or where you want to hit, right? But mostly just focusing on true sight alignment. So equal sight or equal light around the sight in your peep and having that level bubble, right? The next part of that is not focusing on your trigger.
Yep.
So there's two things that he says, like the watch it to keep it, that's focusing on your sight alignment, okay? And the pulling through your shot.
Yep.
And what that is so what we would teach, or what I would teach when passing on like how to manipulate a trigger on a firearm when you're pointing your pistol down range, is focus on your sights, and then what I want you to do is take up the slack on your trigger. So I don't want to say everyone shoots a wrist rocket or a finger actuated release, whether it be an index finger or a thumb button, but a lot of hunters do.
Yep. Well, and the logic there is, I mean, we should all be pulling through our shots, but in the event that you need to punch it, you have the ability to punch it. And if you have a hinge, it's much harder to punch it than it is anything else.
Yeah, that's a different, we can get to that. So every trigger system, whether it be a hinge, a thumb button, or an index finger, has what we would refer to as like a slack or travel.
Yep.
Okay. So even in a hinge, even in a back tension release, there's a point where in shooting that system, the certain amount of travel you have before you have to say to yourself, okay, we're getting close.
Yep.
It could go off any second.
Yep.
Right? Okay. So now you've taken up all that slack, all that travel. Now you're watch to keep it. Watch to keep it. And what you're going to do is the rest of that travel, that last little, minute little distance that your finger has to travel, or your shoulder blade or whatever, okay, to fire that mechanism, you're just thinking, okay, pull, and then eventually it's going to go off. So what I think to myself as I'm in that moment and I've got my trigger system, I'm thinking, okay, I take up that slack, I get to that solid stopping point, and I go, okay, 90%, 91%, 92%, 93%. That's my pull.
Okay.
At some point, that trigger is going to go off before I hit 100%. But the point is I'm so focused on my sight alignment during that pull through that when it finally fires, it's a surprise.
Yep.
Compressed surprise break.
And see, that's I shoot, and I'm not sponsored for anything either. If we're going back to the who am I conversation, I'm literally nobody.
Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Two Nobodies.
So I'm not sponsored, but I'll tell you every piece of gear that I own by brand, whatever. But I shoot Dudley's knock-on releases.
Yeah, I saw that,
and I like them. They're comfortable. I like the two fingers. I've got the hinge coming in today, and I set my releases. Well, I also shoot Spot Hog when I want to shoot an index release.
Okay.
But
that's similar to mine.
But I set my releases to be white hot, so that if my finger's not on the trigger, I know it's not going to go. But when I get into my anchor point and I'm working through my shot execution, I know that as soon as I pull through my shot is gone. And in my head, I'm like, well, you could punch it, or you could surprise yourself. But if you set yourself up for success, at least in my method of thinking through this, I want to be pulling through my shot. So if you're punching your shot by pulling through it, to me that's kind of okay. Maybe it's not the correct way to do things, but it works for me. So I want my shot to be fully pulled through in order to make it fire. So I kind of push those points together, and I'm holding my hands like I'm smushing something, right? Like an opposite accordion here, since you guys at home can't see this. I push the surprise shot and the execution of the shot by pulling through real close together, because I do want it to be a surprise, but I also know that if I sneeze on my release, it's gonna go. So I get into my anchor point and just barely thumb my trigger, so that when my elbow starts to come back, my arrow's gone. So it's not a 100% surprise. I mean, in archery or in shooting, you know that by pressing your trigger or pulling your shot, you're going to fire. So it's not, like somebody shows up at your work with flowers for you or something like that surprise, but it's still enough to prevent me, at least, from flinching in most cases.
Got it.
Or at least, torquing my hand.
Right.
I was going to see if we saw any eyeballs.
Yeah, I want to, oh yeah.
Because that's where they would be.
Yeah, that's where we saw them last night, on our way up.
We're down at the beach right now.
Yeah, we're down at these are coastal animals,
yeah,
okay?
Coastal elk.
Coastal elk. They like to take a dip in the salty water.
Dip your toes.
It's like, it helps their hooves exfoliate.
Yep.
Hoof rot, so.
And you got to take care of your feet, people. I mean, people get hoof rot. And I thought
that was jungle rot.
Well, no, that's a little bit north of the foot. But going back to medical stuff, I don't understand how soldiers, and it's soldiers, when you're in medical, dealing with soldiers is like having children, because you're like, how? I'm sure, how old is your kid?
They basically are.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real.
Well, how old is your kid?
I have a soon-to-be 12-year-old.
Okay.
A 5-year-old that's going to turn 6.
So you have a large experience with toddlers and babies and very young children, and so you understand. Like, you're just sitting there minding your own business as dad, right?
Sure.
And suddenly somebody's crying, somebody's hurt, and you're thinking, what sort of Rube Goldberg machine did you children set up to cause this to happen? And you're sitting there like going crazy trying to figure out how they get themselves into these situations. And it's the same thing with soldiers, because you're like, how? And not for nothing, I can be a very gross person, and not like I'll talk about gross things, but like when I was in the Army, I could spend an entire 30-day field problem with the bare minimum of personal hygiene and be fine. No athlete's foot, no massive body odor, like any of that stuff. And I've gone out with soldiers who would spend one day in the field, walk through one stream, like a toe-high stream, and come back with full-on foot fungus. And I'm like, how? How do you do this? How? Take care of your feet, people. That's what I'm saying.
And that's your medical advice of the day.
Yep. I mean, your feet take you everywhere for the most part, so it makes sense to,
I mean, unless you're driving a Tesla.
Yeah.
Because then the car takes you everywhere.
Well, the other thing I would say is, you gotta really take care of the stuff that keeps you going, and one of those is your kidneys. So take care of your kidneys, folks. Drink water. Don't drink energy drinks all the time like me.
We're both drinking stuff that's not
stimulants.
Good for our kidneys, yeah.
Well, I would say that hot bean water is probably significantly healthier than whatever
than a Red Bull.
Whatever is in Red Bull.
It's just taurine, that's just bull piss.
Yeah,
Isn't that what it is?
Yes.
Something like that.
It's Rocky Mountain oyster juice.
Yeah, there you go.
Mm-mm.
Fresh pressed.
Mm.
Well, this is definitely going to be the most colorful episode.
Putting the rugged in the arts. It's
definitely rugged conversation. I'll have to put a PA at the beginning of this Just to CYA, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's, and I've refrained from using adult words for the most part, I think, and tried to refrain from using completely adult descriptions of
no,
things.
I really liked it. Human Juice was very good. That was very, very good.
Take care of your human juice, people.
Yeah, Human Juice. You know, have you ever met somebody who seemed super smart? You're like, oh man, this person's really intelligent. And then you get into a conversation and you realize that, okay, they're probably BSing a lot of this.
Of course I know him. He's me.
Like, I met this guy. I'm not gonna name names, but we got into a conversation because one day he goes, we're talking about sweat, and he's like, well, that's basically the same thing as pee coming out of your pores.
I don't know about all that.
And I was like, I don't think it is. And he's like, oh yeah, no. So then he goes on to this like 20-30 minute explanation.
Yep.
And he almost had me. I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense, right? I'm like, okay, I kind of could connect those dots, right?
Yeah.
Until he got to the end. And he goes, yeah, and then it comes out your sweat holes. And I was like, oh my God, you totally lost me, bro. You should have said your pores.
So
if
there,
you just said your pores, you would have had me hook, line, sinker. I would have never done all the research. And he said sweat holes, so I went on like a 45-minute research trip trying to figure out if they are the same. And no, they're not, people.
No.
Sweat and urine are two completely different fluids. The only thing they have in common is that they are fluids.
Yeah. And I mean, so two things. One, and correct me if I'm wrong, but sweat is water that is, filtered out through the skin in an effort to keep you cool, as opposed to urine, which is a waste product created by your body. Yes, it does contain water, but it also contains all of the stuff that, that's absolute liquid that your body couldn't process into some sort of fuel. But two, there's a really neat video that I forget what this guy, his channel is called, or who he is, but the video is, it's a guy who's at a gun range talking about different types of rounds. The video is called How to Spot Fake Experts.
Awesome.
And he goes through the multiple ways that you can figure out if someone is just BSing you to sound smart, which I think is what you were dealing with the sweat hole guy. And
he believed what he was saying. I honestly believe he believed what he was saying.
Sure, but I mean, fake experts are all over the place.
Yeah.
And they either read something that convinced them that they're correct, or heard something from somebody without actually doing any research, which is why...
Oh my God, that sounds like most of the world right now.
Right.
With Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a headline on Facebook. It must be real. Anyways,
you can't lie on the internet.
Yeah, lying's not... You can't do
It's
that.
not allowed?
No. They kick you off, right?
Oh, yeah, you get booted for the rest of your life if you lie on the internet.
If only that were the case. There needs to be consequences. I'm telling you, I was talking to my wife about this the other day. Just hear me out real quick,
Okay.
and then we'll go back to what we were talking about fake experts, okay? All right. So, if I were to call the police right now and give them a false report, I could go to jail.
That is correct.
Okay? There is no consequence for lying on the internet, and there should be. Because the reason why is because there's people out there that won't fact check, that won't do the research, and that can breed a situation where you get all these mindless drones following your garbage.
Yep.
And they're like, yeah, let's bring down the state or the government or whatever, because all this shit is BS. And that whole like mindset just kind of grows and grows and grows. Why? Because they believe this one guy.
Sure.
You know.
And not to get too political on it, because there's a road I can definitely go down with that. But the idea, I would say that there is a fair amount of personal responsibility that should be taken into consideration or enforced.
Sure.
Like, if you read something stupid on the internet and you believed it because you happen to be an idiot, then you should have to deal with the consequences of your beliefs.
Yeah.
Like, if you read on the internet that injecting bleach into your eyeballs would help improve your vision because, bleach is a cleaner and your eyeballs have cataracts and you want to clean out your eyeballs, go ahead, but at the same time, any of my tax money should not be used to pay for the medical treatments that are required to take care of you now that you've injected bleach into your eyeballs because you thought that it would clean out your eyeballs, right? And that is personal responsibility.
True. However, you could say personal responsibility, but we have warning labels on the back of product
Then there's
because
a
of
reason
people
we
that are
have-
stupid.
Yeah.
In an effort to protect people from
Themselves.
themselves. Exactly. So we're not talking like midnight 1 a.m. QVC channel and I'm ordering some dumb shit that's
Sure.
never going to work. We're talking about the internet where you can reach millions, trillions of people.
But you set up,
You know what I'm saying?
if you're going to curb, because essentially what you're suggesting is curbing free speech, right?
Well,
And if you're going to curb free speech on the internet, you set up a very totalitarian, slippery slope.
sure, and that's what a lot of people want to avoid. I agree. I don't want to infringe on someone's free speech.
Yeah.
However, I will say this.
But if I disagree with them, I do.
No. If your free speech is inherently endangering other people,
Sure.
then I kind of disagree to
Well,
a certain extent.
I get what you're
like,
saying.
that needs
'Cause
to
you
be
can't
curbed.
yell fire in a crowded building. That's illegal.
Exactly.
And that
You can't yell bomb on a plane.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're going to cause hysteria.
Yep.
And spouting off horse shit on the internet where, anybody can just read it and then go, oh, that must be real. Let's all fucking get on a jam. Oh, man, I'm going to have to bleep this out. Let's all get on a bandwagon and go rally.
Well, remember,
You know what I
kids,
mean?
If you have cataracts, you inject bleach into your eyeball.
But here's the thing. The angry mob goes downtown,
Yep.
becomes an angry mob, and then innocent people get hurt.
Yep.
So I get that, I don't want to infringe on someone's free speech. I really don't. I also don't want innocent people to get hurt because some dumb goofball decided to post some stuff, and
Well, that's
and
kind of
incite-
evolution, though, right? In that,
You can go with Darwin here, and
Yeah,
we're
it's-
thinning the herd.
Yeah, I mean it is. It's social Darwinism. You have, if you print something stupid, like let's say for example, I run a BS medical blog, right? And now I've said,
Are you serious?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Yes, in my spare time, I give out terrible medical advice. So if you're constipated, the easiest way to deal with constipation
Is a pine cone.
is to jam a squirrel into your O-ring and allow the squirrel to clear out the backed up matter, and people start doing that. Really, that it kind of falls on them for being idiots. It's not really on me.
But again, we're discussing someone's dumb choice affecting one person.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
But
and not the other
that's-
way
that's
around, where
where
the
I
dumb
think-
choice incites them to go and be an angry mob and then injure innocent people.
But that's where the personal responsibility and critical thinking come into play, right?
Definitely need more of that.
Yeah, and well, I think a lot of people, maybe, well, I don't know how many people, But I would say, looking at the way the world is, at least in the United States right now, at present day, at 4:49 a.m. on September 11th, that people don't really want to think critically about things, because at a certain point, if you do your research, you take on responsibility for your decisions, right? Whereas if you blindly follow the words or writings or advice of other people, at least in your head, maybe you are absolved of that decision-making process, and you don't feel like that you should be held responsible or face consequences for things that you do, because you're just doing what you were told or taking someone else's advice, right?
Wow, religion. Huh?
No, we're getting real deep on stuff.
I was just going to say, you're like blindly following, and I'm like, well, I can think of a couple things people blindly follow.
Yeah. And I mean,
you know,
like I said, it's far too early for me to get angry about stuff, but it's one of those things where, you know,
I'm just trying to offer, like, be the devil's advocate
Sure.
in the conversation, because don't get me wrong, people, I'm Christian. I tend to go to church when it's allowed by the government.
Well, and to that I would say that, you know, because I used to go to church. You don't, if you believe in religion, that's fine. And if you have your own religion, that's fine. And I would say that you don't necessarily have to go to church to have a connection with your deity of choice. Because in the vast majority of religions that have deities, the deity in said religion is described in most cases as omnipotent, right? All knowing, all seeing, all hearing, all being, whatever. So the idea that you need to be crowded into a room with other people who are like-minded individuals, to me at least, is unnecessary, because if your deity is omnipotent, then you should be able to chat with him or her or it anywhere you want, right? Like out here in this truck, out over there in the woods, you know, at church, sure. And I understand the need that we as people, herd animals, because people are herd animals, the need that we have to socialize and be socialized. It's a very pertinent need that we have. So I understand, but at the same time, I'm just like, why? Why do you need to go to church? Unless you're going there specifically to chat up other people that also believe in religion. Like, I mean...
Well, you know, I hear you, and I totally agree with you. I will offer my wife's view on that a little bit, is that she likes going to church to be connected with other people who are like-minded. Yeah. She feels it helps center her,
and that's fair,
when she's, you know, talking to, you know, Christ, and there is a certain comfort that comes with congregating with others who are, you know, in that same place in life, so to speak.
Well, I mean, it's the same reason we join hunters forums or gaming forums or, you know, whatever. We want to socialize with like-minded people, and the one thing that I would say that we need to be careful of. What are we looking at?
I'm fine. I'm trying to get a good stopping point.
Oh.
Because I think we might have passed it, and I need to check.
Okay. Maybe we'll just do right here.
All right, so...
I would say the one thing that we need